is Julia and today I'm going to show you how to sew on a button. I'll be using this grey cardigan to demonstrate because a button has already fallen off here, and instead of stitching on a new grey button I'm actually going to replace all the buttons with a really colourful combination. This is a great thing to do if you're wanting to jazz up a garment you already own or to make something a bit more personal to your own unique style. To sew on a button you're going to need some buttons, a needle, some scissors, yarns that match the colour of your buttons, and a penny. So I'll come on to the use of the penny in just a moment, but before we get started sewing on the button, I'm just going to double thread the needle and tie 4 knots in the bottom of the thread to make sure that it's really sturdy when we come to start the stitches to sew on our button. As I mentioned before, I've actually removed the existing buttons from the cardigan and I'm going to take this opportunity to stitch on a variety of new colourful buttons. So I've stitched that one on the bottom there. I'm going to do this next one right at the top. So I'm going to start just by placing a couple of stitches into the back of the work, just to make sure that knot really does hold itself. As well as the button, this is when I'm going to use the penny. And the penny acts as a spacer to space the button off the front of the work so that it doesn't get too close. It's really important with buttons that they don't lie too flat to the front of the work. I'm going in through one of the holes and back out the other hole. And again, I like to do this maybe 4 times just to get a sturdy hold with the thread. When I've finished the last stitch into the button, I'm actually going to come back up through the front of the work and loop the thread around the button 4 times. This is really important to add some extra security to the yarns before I do a couple of other stitches in the back and knot twice, again to finish it off really securely. Snip as close as you can to the back of the work so that the yarn can come through, and that's your button. I'm going to also just talk through a 4-hole button. It's the exact same process, except instead of just going between the 2 holes in your button, you've got a bit of opportunity to get creative with actually how you place your stitches. Any of the combination of ways that you can do is just as sturdy as each other, but for this one here I'm going to demonstrate a crossover approach. So here again I've double threaded the needle. I'm doing 4 knots at the bottom of that yarn and I'm going to go in through the back of the work first. Do a couple of stitches just to get that sturdy base. Make sure that your thread isn't going anywhere, and come up through one of the buttons. So for this technique, again, the penny goes as a spacer and we cross over diagonally the holes. So through the back of the work, back to the front of the work, and we're going to do 4 stitches between these 2 holes on the diagonal. Be careful because your yarns can get caught up with some of the other buttons that you've just stitched in place. And it's worth with every stitch just making sure that you're not caught on anything else. Come back up through the front of the work and start on the other diagonal. So we've done 4 stitches from one diagonal. We're now going to do 4 stitches crossed over on the other diagonal to get that X crossover shape. At this point here, I've decided to ditch the penny because I've got a good feel for how the button should sit on the top of the surface. Do those 4 rotations and then through the back of the work to finish off. 2 stitches and then cut. And for the rest of the buttons, I'm going to go super speedy as a refresher, and also just so that you get to see the full impact. Now, replacing the buttons on this whole cardigan took about 30 minutes. So if you wanted to have the time, and that's replacing 8 buttons as well. So if you've got half an hour and you want to replace some buttons on a cardigan or a shirt or a dress or a skirt that maybe buttons up down the front or the back, it can be a really great way to update and make a bit more personal a garment that you might not be wearing. And that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this button replacement tutorial. Happy sewing!